Some moments don't announce themselves. They slip quietly into your life, disguised as ordinary days. For Mara, that moment walked into Café Pomegranate on a Wednesday morning in the form of a girl in a wheelchair and the man pushing her. The girl's hair was the color of sunshine caught in glass. She was maybe 8 or 9, with curious eyes that seemed to scan the whole cafe without resting on anything for too long. Her father was a tall, well-dressed man, the kind of customer who made the other staff straighten their aprons without realizing it. The cafe was busy, too busy for a slow Wednesday, but when Mara caught the little girl's gaze, the noise faded. "Hi there," Mara said softly as she came over with 2 glasses of water. "Would you like a lemon star in yours?" The girl tilted her head. "It's just a slice of lemon shaped like a star," Mara explained, smiling. "But it tastes like sunshine." A small giggle slipped out, and Mara felt the man's eyes on her. If you love stories that make you smile, you're in the right place. And before we go further, tell me, where in the world are you watching or listening from? I'd love to know how far this story travels. Back at the table, the man finally spoke. "She's Lily. I'm Daniel." "Nice to meet you, Daniel," Mara said, glancing at Lily again. "And it's lovely to meet you too, Miss Lemonstar." That earned another giggle from Lily, and Daniel's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Mara took their order, making a note of Lily's preference for plain chicken and soft vegetables. When she returned with the food, Lily seemed hesitant. Her fork hovered in the air. "Not feeling hungry?" Mara asked. Lily shrugged. Mara reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a tiny origami bird she'd folded during a slow shift last week. "This one only flies if you take a bite," she whispered conspiratorially. Lily's smile widened. She took a small bite, and Mara made the bird fly across the table. The girl laughed, a sound so pure it made Daniel's eyes soften. After the meal, Daniel lingered. "You're very good with her," he said. "Kids are honest," Mara replied. "If they trust you, you've earned it." He studied her for a moment. "Would you consider spending more time with Lily? She doesn't connect easily with people. But with you," he let the thought hang. Mara hesitated. She needed the extra shifts at the cafe. Rent wasn't going to pay itself. But the way Lily was looking at her, like she'd just been handed a new friend, made her say, "I'd love to." Daniel started bringing Lily to the cafe a few times a week. Mara would take her on little adventures, feeding crumbs to birds outside, folding napkins into animals, teaching her how to draw little smiling suns on paper coasters. Slowly, Daniel started smiling more. At first it was for Lily's sake, but Mara caught him watching her sometimes, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. One evening, after closing, Mara stepped outside to find Daniel waiting. "Lily's been happier these past weeks," he said. "I think you've had something to do with that." Mara shrugged, a little embarrassed. "She's a special kid." "She is," Daniel said. "And so are you." He didn't stay long, but his words stayed with her all night. What Mara didn't know yet was that Daniel's visits weren't just about Lily's smile. He'd noticed things, like how Mara's shoes were wearing thin, or how she sometimes glanced at the clock with a worried frown, as if measuring the hours against a bill she couldn't quite pay. And without telling her, he'd already decided something. Mara had changed his daughter's life. He was going to change hers. It started small. At first, Daniel would simply bring Lily to the cafe every other morning, claiming it was for the change of scenery. But Mara knew better. Lily's eyes lit up the second she saw her, and Daniel's usual stoic air softened, just a fraction, when Mara pulled up a chair beside his daughter. One Thursday morning, while Mara was restocking the pastry case, her manager appeared beside her holding the cafe phone. "It's for you," he said, smirking like he'd just been let in on a secret. She wiped her hands on her apron and answered. "This is Mara." "Good morning," came Daniel's voice, warm and deliberate. "Lily wanted me to ask if you'd join us at the park today. She's been asking for her friend." Mara glanced at the clock. Her shift ended in an hour, and her plan for the afternoon involved catching up on laundry and try to figure out how to stretch the last of her grocery money until payday. But she found herself smiling. "I'd love to." The park was painted in soft gold when she arrived. Lily was on the swings, hair flying, laughter spilling into the breeze. Daniel stood nearby, in a navy sweater and jeans, no suit, no tie, looking like an entirely different man from the one who had first walked into her cafe. "You made it," he said, meeting her halfway. I promised Miss Lemonstar, she replied, nodding toward Lily. Miss Lemonstar? Daniel asked, amused. That's our special name, Mara said. She earned it fair and square. Daniel chuckled, a genuine sound that made Mara notice the faint dimples she'd never seen before. They spent the afternoon chasing a gaggle of stubborn geese, drawing chalk flowers on the pavement, and sharing an oversized cloud of cotton candy. Daniel mostly stayed in the background, letting Lily and Mara have their fun, but every so often he'd join them, and his laughter would mix with Lily's until the air itself felt lighter. It became a pattern. Parks, ice cream stops, lazy strolls through the botanical gardens. Mara learned that Lily loved birds, but was afraid of balloons. She liked strawberry milkshakes, but only if they came in a glass with a bendy straw. And she adored stories, especially when Mara made up silly characters on the spot. One rainy afternoon, they sheltered under a gazebo while Lily sat on a picnic blanket, sketching flowers in her notebook. You been working at the cafe long? Daniel asked, holding his paper cup like he needed its warmth. Almost 2 years, Mara said. Long enough to know everyone's coffee order and most of their heartbreaks. He smiled faintly. And yours? She shrugged. Oh, nothing worth telling. Just the usual late rent. A car that breaks down if I look at it wrong. Dreams I can't quite afford yet. Something flickered in his expression. Concern, curiosity, maybe both. But he didn't push. Instead, he watched her for a moment, the rain softening the world around them, as if committing the image to memory. The weeks passed, and Lily began to change. She spoke more, laughed more. She asked for Mara, even on days Daniel hadn't planned to visit the cafe. The once reserved girl was blooming in a way that even Daniel hadn't expected. One afternoon, as they walked out of the cafe together, Daniel said quietly, You've done more for her than any specialist has. You've given her joy. Mara smiled. She's given me the same. Daniel started noticing things about Mara, little things she probably thought no one paid attention to. How she never bought herself coffee when she was working, even though she clearly loved it. How her shoes were worn down at the heels. How her phone screen was cracked in a way that made it nearly unreadable. And slowly, his gratitude started turning into something else. It wasn't just about Lily anymore. He admired the way Mara listened without rushing. The way she made space for Lily's silences without filling them with noise. The way she carried her own burdens quietly, without bitterness. It was Lily who set the next step in motion. One Saturday, she tugged on Daniel's sleeve, leaned in and whispered something. He smiled, then turned to Mara. She wants to invite you to dinner, at our home. Mara blinked. Dinner? Nothing formal, Daniel assured her. Just a meal. She wants you there. Mara hesitated. She'd never been to Daniel's side of the city, the kind with tree-lined streets, sprawling gardens, and gates that only opened if they knew your name. She wasn't sure she'd fit into that world. But when she looked at Lily's hopeful expression, she couldn't say no. When she arrived that evening, she was greeted not by an intimidating display of wealth, but by the warm smell of roasted chicken and the sight of Lily wheeling herself into the foyer to meet her. Miss Lemonstar, Mara said, bending to hug her. Daniel appeared, dressed in a simple button-down, holding 2 glasses of sparkling water. Welcome. I'm glad you came. Dinner was unexpectedly relaxed. They ate in a sunroom, surrounded by the scent of fresh flowers. Lily insisted on telling knock-knock jokes. She clearly made up on the spot. Daniel shared stories from his travels, funny ones, the kind that made Mara laugh until her cheeks ached. And Mara, in turn, shared tales from the cafe, like the time a regular proposed to his girlfriend over a latte art heart that accidentally came out looking like a potato, somewhere between dessert and coffee. Mara realized she wasn't thinking about the difference between their worlds anymore. She was simply there, comfortable. Lily was the bridge between them, yes. But something else was forming too, something quiet, steady, and unspoken. When it was time to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. Thank you for coming, he said. Thank you for having me. He hesitated, then added, It means a lot to her, and to me. Mara smiled, but inside something shifted. Daniel wasn't just Lily's father anymore. He was becoming someone she thought about when she wasn't supposed to. It began with little things Mara barely noticed at first. The first was her shoes. She'd been wearing the same pair of black flats for over a year, the soles thinning until she could feel the pavement through them. One morning when she arrived at the cafe, she found a plain brown box sitting behind the counter with her name on it. Inside was a pair of soft leather flats, simple, elegant, and exactly her size. She assumed it was from her manager, but when she asked, he shrugged. Anonymous. Just said you've been on your feet too much lately. She didn't need to guess twice who it was. Then came her phone. The cracked screen had been an annoyance for months, making it hard to answer calls without cutting her fingers. One afternoon, as she walked out of the cafe, Daniel was leaning against his car. Here, he said, handing her a small bag. She opened it to find a sleek new phone. Daniel, I can't. You can, he said, his tone gentle but firm. Consider it a thank you for everything you've done for Lily. Mara hesitated. She wasn't used to accepting gifts, especially from customers. But Daniel's gaze was steady, and Lily was in the back seat, waving at her with a grin too wide to ignore. Thank you, she said softly. Their afternoons together continued, sometimes at the park, sometimes in Daniel's home. Mara began noticing things about him, too. The way his voice softened when talking to Lily, the way his laughter came easier now than when they first met, the way he seemed to listen more than he spoke. One rainy day, they stayed indoors, baking cookies in the kitchen. Lily sat at the counter, measuring sugar with exaggerated care. Daniel leaned against the island, watching them with an expression Mara couldn't quite read. You're good for her, he said quietly when Lily went to fetch more cookie cutters. Mara smiled. She's good for me, too. It was that night, as she was leaving, that she spotted the envelope slipped into her bag. Inside was a check, more than she made in a month, with a note in Daniel's neat handwriting. For the rent you shouldn't have to worry about. Her first instinct was to return it. Pride had a way of making her draw lines she didn't want crossed. But the truth was she'd been weeks behind on rent, and the thought of a landlord's eviction notice had been keeping her awake at night. She tucked the envelope back into her bag and told herself she'd thank him later. The real change came on an evening in early spring. Daniel invited her and Lily to a charity gala he was hosting, insisting it was nothing too formal. Mara almost said no. Her nicest dress was a simple navy thing she'd bought for her cousin's wedding years ago. But Lily's excitement was contagious. The gala was held in a ballroom, glittering with soft light. Mara felt out of place at first among the well-dressed guests, but Daniel never let her drift too far from him. He introduced her to people, real estate partners, old friends, board members, and every time he introduced her not as a friend or a Lily sitter, but as Mara. Just Mara. No labels. When they danced, it wasn't formal, just a slow, easy sway while Lily laughed from the sidelines. And for the first time, Mara realized how much she enjoyed the way his hand felt resting against hers. After the gala, Daniel drove her home. They lingered in the car outside her apartment, neither of them rushing to end the night. Thank you for tonight, she said. Thank you for coming, he replied. Then, after a pause, I want you to know something. I don't just appreciate what you've done for Lily. I appreciate you. Mara's breath caught, but before she could respond, Lily's sleepy voice from the back seat interrupted. Dad, can Mara come over tomorrow? Daniel smiled. I think that can be arranged. That night, Mara lay awake in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. She wasn't naive. She knew their worlds were different. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was standing outside of something good. She felt like she was already inside it. And maybe, just maybe, she belonged there. Some stories have a turning point you can pinpoint to the exact second, like a key turning in a lock you didn't even know was there. For Daniel, that moment came on a Tuesday evening when Mara thought no one was watching. She just finished walking Lily home from the park. The sun was low, the air smelled faintly of jasmine, and Lily had insisted on showing Mara every new drawing in her sketchbook. Daniel had stepped away to take a call in his study, leaving the two of them in the living room. When Mara thought she was alone, she sat back on the couch, her smile slipping into something quieter. Her hand drifted to her temple, and for a brief moment she closed her eyes, tired, but not just in the physical sense. There was a weight there, invisible but heavy, and it made Daniel pause in the doorway. Before I go on, if you've been following this story and you believe kindness has the power to change a life, you're exactly the kind of person I love sharing these with. And since we've got listeners and viewers from all over the world, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Daniel waited until Lily went upstairs before sitting across from Mara. You okay? She opened her eyes, caught off guard. Of course. Why? You look somewhere else just now. Mara hesitated. She wasn't in the habit of spilling her personal struggles, especially not to someone like Daniel. But something about his tone made it hard to keep up the polite walls. It's nothing. Just been a long month. How long? She gave a short laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. Long enough that the electricity company's been leaving those little friendly reminder notes on my door. Long enough that I'm counting tips to make sure I can keep my apartment in another month. But really, it's fine. I've managed before. Daniel studied her for a moment, and in that silence, he decided something. That night, after Mara left, he called his assistant. I need you to find me a 2-bedroom apartment, something safe near the park, and I want it under her name by the end of the week. Understood, the assistant replied without missing a beat. 2 days later, he called Mara and asked if she could meet him and Lily for an afternoon surprise. Curious, she agreed. When she arrived, Daniel led her to a quiet street lined with blooming jacaranda trees. They stopped in front of a freshly painted building with a small balcony on the second floor. What is this? She asked, her brow furrowed. Your new place, Daniel said simply. Mara blinked. Daniel, I can't accept that. Yes, you can, he interrupted gently. And it's not charity. It's thanks. You've been there for Lily in ways no one else has. You've been there for me in ways you don't even realize. This is me making sure you can keep being you, without the constant worry of where you'll sleep next month. Her throat tightened. Daniel, it's too much. It's not enough, he said, his voice low but certain. You've given us something money can't buy. This, he gestured to the building. This is the least I can do. Mara's eyes stung, but she managed a shaky laugh. You know, you're making it very hard to keep seeing you as just Lily's dad. Daniel smiled. I stopped seeing you as just Lily's friend a long time ago. The air between them shifted then, gentle, warm, and full of things neither of them quite said aloud. The next few weeks were a kind of quiet heaven. Mara settled into her new apartment, which Daniel had somehow managed to fill with small touches she loved. Bookshelves already stocked with a few of her favorite titles, a kitchen stocked with good coffee, a window seat with a view of the park. Lily visited often, dragging Daniel along, and the three of them would spend hours cooking, playing games, or just talking late into the evening. One night, as they sat on the balcony watching the city lights, Daniel glanced at her and said, I know I've changed your address, but I want to change more than that. Mara tilted her head. Like what? He hesitated, then smiled softly. Let's just say, I'm thinking about the future. Mara felt her heart beat a little faster, but before she could ask what he meant, Lily came bursting onto the balcony with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. The moment slipped away, but it left a trace, like the faint perfume of jasmine lingering long after the flowers were gone. That night, lying in bed, Mara realized something. This wasn't just gratitude anymore, for Daniel and for her. Somewhere between lemon stars, park afternoons, and quiet conversations, they had become part of each other's lives in a way that felt permanent. And she wasn't afraid of that permanence. She wanted it. It happened on a Sunday morning, the kind of morning where the air feels too gentle to belong to a city. Mara was still in her pajamas when the knock came at her apartment door. When she opened it, Lily was there in her wheelchair, beaming, a little gift bag in her lap. Daniel stood just behind her, smiling like he knew something she didn't. We brought breakfast, he said, holding up a paper bag that smelled like fresh croissants. Mara stepped aside to let them in, and Lily wheeled herself straight to the kitchen table. She placed the little gift bag in front of Mara. What's this? Mara asked. Lily tapped her chin thoughtfully, then grinned. Open it. Inside was a small framed photo, one Daniel had taken at the park weeks ago. Mara and Lily were both laughing, a chalk drawing at their feet. It was the kind of candid moment you couldn't stage if you tried. Lily chose to frame herself, Daniel said. She said it's her favorite picture. Mara felt her chest tighten in that warm, full way that made her blink a little faster than usual. Thank you, she said softly. They sat down for breakfast, the 3 of them passing plates, sipping coffee, and listening to Lily chatter about her latest drawing project. At one point, Daniel leaned back in his chair, just watching them, a soft smile tugging at his lips. You know, he said after a moment, when we first met, I thought this would just be about helping Lily. I didn't expect, he trailed off. Didn't expect what? Mara asked, curious. He looked at her, and his gaze was steady. I didn't expect you to become part of my life, too. Mara's heart stuttered. After breakfast, they decided to take Lily to the botanical gardens. The paths were lined with bursts of color: lavender, marigold, roses in full bloom. Lily insisted on smelling every flower, and Mara didn't mind a bit. At one point, Daniel lagged behind, letting Mara push Lily's chair ahead. She didn't hear him approach until his voice was low at her side. She's happiest when she's with you, he said. She's happy because she's loved, Mara replied, glancing at him. That's you. Daniel shook his head. It's us. The rest of the day passed in that quiet rhythm they'd found together. When they dropped Lily off at home that evening, she asked Daniel something Mara didn't catch. He laughed, shook his head, but Lily kept insisting until finally he said, We'll see. On the drive back to Mara's apartment, the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy in a good way, full of things both of them knew were inching closer to being said. A few days later, Daniel called Mara out of the blue. Can you come over tonight? There's something I'd like to talk to you about. When she arrived, Lily was already in her pajamas, curled up with a storybook. She waved at Mara sleepily before heading upstairs. Daniel poured them both a glass of wine and gestured for her to join him in the sunroom. The night air drifted in through the open windows, carrying the faint scent of jasmine. Mara, he began, these past months you've done more than you know. For Lily. For me. She started to respond, but he raised a hand. Let me finish. I've spent years thinking my life was complete. Work, a home, providing for my daughter. But you've shown me that it's not just about providing. It's about being present, about joy, and you brought that into our lives. Her throat felt tight. Daniel? He smiled faintly. I don't want to imagine our lives without you in them. Not just as Lily's friend, not just as someone who visits. I want you here, with us. Always. It was simple, direct, and somehow more powerful than any flowery speech could have been. Mara searched his face for any sign that he was joking, but there was only sincerity there. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll think about it, Daniel said, though the hope in his voice made it clear which answer he wanted. She laughed softly, her chest aching in the best way. I'll think about it. From then on, everything felt different. When Mara visited, Daniel no longer hovered like a host. He sat beside her, shared stories, laughed at her jokes. When they were out with Lily, he'd glance at Mara as if to say, this is ours now. One evening, as they walked Lily to the park, a passerby assumed they were family and said, You have a beautiful daughter. Daniel didn't correct them, and Mara didn't either. What neither of them knew yet was that Lily had been quietly plotting her own little plan. She had seen the way her dad looked at Mara, the way Mara's eyes softened when she laughed at something Daniel said, and one night, she asked her father the simplest question in the world. Why don't you marry her? Daniel had laughed, but the idea didn't leave him. It sat with him through meetings, through dinners, through quiet moments in the garden. By the end of the week, it wasn't just an idea anymore. It was a decision. If you've been with us this far, you can probably feel it. The way this story is leaning toward something big, something beautiful. And I'll just say this. What's coming next might be my favorite part yet. Before we get there, I want to know, where in the world are you listening from? Globe showing Europe, Africa, drop it below. And let's see just how far Mara, Daniel, and Lily's story has traveled. Mara didn't think much of it when Daniel invited her and Lily to a small family dinner on a Friday evening. She assumed it would be the usual, good food, laughter. Maybe a new board game Lily wanted to try. What she didn't know was that Daniel had been quietly planning this for weeks. When she arrived, the first thing she noticed was the warm glow spilling out of the conservatory. Lily was waiting by the door, dressed in a soft blue dress, a ribbon in her hair, beaming like she'd been keeping a wonderful secret. You look beautiful, Mara said, kneeling to hug her. So do you, Lily replied with a little grin, as if she knew exactly what was about to happen. Daniel appeared from the hallway, not in his usual suit, but in a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled back. Somehow it made him look even more at ease and more himself than she'd ever seen. Dinner's in the garden tonight, he said. The garden was magical. Strings of lights were woven through the trees, casting a soft golden glow. A small table was set onto the old jacaranda. Its lavender blossoms scattered like confetti over the lawn. They ate slowly, the kind of meal where the conversation flowed as easily as the wine. Lily told a long, winding story about a dream she'd had. Daniel laughed more than usual, and Mara felt full, not just from the food, but from the moment. After dessert, Lily excused herself to check on something, leaving Mara and Daniel alone at the table. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the tablecloth, his eyes fixed on hers. "Mara," he began, "when you first walked over to our table at that cafe, I thought you were just being kind to a stranger's daughter. I didn't know that day would change the shape of my life." Her breath caught, but he kept going. "You gave Lily something I thought was gone forever. Joy without conditions. And you gave me something I didn't even know I was missing, a reason to believe and love again." Mara's eyes stung, and she blinked quickly, not wanting to break the moment. Daniel stood, walked around the table, and knelt beside her chair. From his pocket he pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring that caught the light, without screaming for attention, just like him. "I don't want to just thank you, Mara," he said softly. "I want to build a life with you, with us. Will you marry me?" Mara's hand flew to her mouth, her heart racing. She didn't need to think about it. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "yes." Lily reappeared at that exact moment, clapping her hands with delight. "I told you she'd say yes." Daniel laughed, slipping the ring onto Mara's finger, then pulling her into an embrace that felt like home. When they sat back down, Mara noticed an envelope beside her plate. "What's this?" she asked. "Something I've been working on," Daniel said, gesturing for her to open it. Inside was a deed, her name printed clearly at the top. She scanned it, her eyes widening. This is my apartment." "Your apartment," Daniel confirmed. "Paid in full. Yours, no strings. I wanted you to know that whether you said yes tonight or not, I meant it when I said I want to take care of you. You've been carrying too much alone for too long. Now you never have to wonder if you'll have a place to call home." Mara stared at him, overwhelmed. "Daniel, this is exactly what you deserve," he finished. They sat there for a moment, the night air wrapping around them, the jacaranda blossoms drifting down like tiny blessings. Lily climbed into Mara's lap, curling against her with a contented sigh. And in that quiet, Mara realized something. She hadn't just fallen in love with a man. She'd fallen in love with a family. The rest of the evening was laughter and soft music, the three of them talking about everything and nothing. But underneath it all, there was a certainty, a promise that this wasn't the end of something sweet, but the beginning of something lasting. And Mara knew, with complete clarity, that the girl in the wheelchair and the man in the crisp, white shirt had changed her life forever. If this story touched you, there's plenty more where it came from. And since I love seeing how far these moments travel, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching or listening from? Let's see just how far Mara, Daniel, and Lily's story can go.